sound test for Development and Management Committee on the 21st of January.
Okay. Right. Good morning, all. My name is Peter Fane. I'm a councillor for Shelford Ward and chair of this committee. I'd like to welcome you all to the Development Management Committee meeting, 10 a.m. Wednesday, 21st January 2026. Agenda item 1, apologies. Do we have any apologies? I think we've received apologies from Councillor Khan, Councillor Hawkins. I believe Councillor Garvey is here in place of Councillor Khan. Are we aware of any others who have submitted their apologies for this meeting? We look as though, good. So I'm going to ask members to just go around and introduce themselves. I suggest we start with my vice chair and go around that way, just so we all know who we are, for the benefit of our visitors in particular. So,
thank you very much,
yes.
Chair. My name is Simon Smith. I'm a City Councillor for Castle Ward and I'm Vice Chair of this committee. Thank you.
I'm Councillor Katie Thornborough and Ward Councillor for Petersfield Ward.
Erin Garvey, Councillor for Girton, Drayton and Mattingly.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Katie Porrer and I represent Market for Cambridge City Council.
Cambridge City Councillor Tim Griffin, representing Coleridge Ward.
Councillor Martin Smart, King's Edges.
You mind?
Oh, where we are, right. Okay.
it's an initiative test. I think we can all pass it.
Councillor Anna Bradnan, and I'm from South Cambs District Council, and my ward is Milton and Waterbeach.
Oh, mine's come on.
And it really is me this time. My name is Richard Williams. I'm the District Councillor for the Whittlesford Ward.
I'm Richard Stobart. I'm a member of South Cambs District Council for Girton Ward, that includes Drayton and Mattingly.
Thank you. Our quorum, of course, is 3 members from each of the 2 councils, and we are quorate, so we can start. As it happens, we don't need to be quorate today for other reasons. The officers permanently at the table for the meeting are, I think I can introduce you. Strategic Sites Delivery Manager Philippa Kelly, Committee Manager James Goddard, Producer Matthew Hussey, and of course our Legal Advisor Vanessa Blaine. Now, copies of the agenda can be found on the City Council's website under Committee Meetings, Minutes and Agendas. Members should note, of course, that everything on your desk, including your laptop screen, may be broadcast at some point. For members, if you would raise your hands if you wish to speak. I don't think we have any members joining us remotely. No, not today. So I won't read out the instructions for Teams meeting members. There are, of course, no planning applications on today's committee agenda. We have one pre-application briefing. And just to remind members, we are encouraged to ask questions and seek clarification on the presentation, but I would remind members not to express any opinions or proposals which might imply or suggest predetermination. Just to remind members that we have had a briefing on this application before. Some members will have had the opportunity to remind themselves of the issues raised then in August of last year. So moving on to agenda item 2, could members advise if they have any declarations of interest in relation to this matter? I see none. Agenda item 3. I think members will have seen the minutes of the meeting on... Councillor Stobart, I beg your pardon.
Although we haven't seen the scope of the presentation, I'd just like to remind the committee that I'm a member of CamCycle and also Rail Future. I've had no deliberations in either of those organisations about them.
Well, I suppose while we're on it, I'll declare that I'm a member of CPPF, Cambridgeshire Past, Present and Future, who may, I don't know, have a view on this when it comes to us in due course. I have not discussed with them. Okay, members, let's move on to agenda item 3, which are the minutes of the meeting on 17th of December, which I think you've all seen. Do any members have any comments on the accuracy of those minutes? None? So can I take it by affirmation that we approve those minutes? I see none against that. Just a moment, members. Best if only those who were here at that meeting raise their hands in affirmation. So I'll take that again. Can we take it by affirmation that we approve those minutes? Thank you. No need for the rest to explain why they aren't raising their hands. I think we can take that by affirmation. Those minutes are approved. So we come to the main business of the day, which is pre-application developer briefing. And let me just say how much as a committee we do appreciate developers coming in before us and outlining their plans. So the process for the briefing will be developers will be invited to present for up to 25 minutes, and members of the committee will then be able to ask questions, again for up to 25 minutes. So I would ask the developers to introduce themselves. What I'm going to do is to, if I may, ask Andrew Levins from Prologis to introduce your colleagues, if you would.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. Andrew Blevins from Prologis. Very pleased to be back here and see some familiar faces again. We have a tried and tested bench of experts with me here today, so we'll be looking to embrace your questions. Ross, who leads on architecture, John, who leads on landscape architecture, and Sammy, who is our sustainability expert.
Thank you very
core
much.
disciplines, but we have others who can answer other questions as well.
Okay, well, your colleagues who may be brought in to answer questions can no doubt introduce themselves.
Thank you.
As you call on them. So, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. And to be specific, we're here to talk about the final building, 4000 Discovery Drive, in the Phase 2 development of the modern-day expansion of the Cambridge Biomedical Campus. The campus, you will know, resides comfortably on the south side, although as it has expanded, it's become more of a fabric of the city as opposed to just a destination. I'm going to touch on just a couple of important items that we want to talk about in terms of an overview before I hand over to Sammy to drill down into the specifics of sustainability. From the beginning, we have, when that stabilizes, from the beginning, our vision for Phase 2 is that we should look to create a family of buildings. That doesn't mean that these should be identical twins, but there will be some familial traits as you wander around that part of the biomedical campus. Our jumping off point, if you will, for 4000, i.e. the final building, was local inspiration from Cripps Hall. Not just its colouring, which you will see as the development, as this presentation unfolds, but in terms of its how we've articulated the facade. This building is working really, really hard. If you drop down to the to the left-hand bottom master plan picture, where you will see that it is the easternmost building on the master plan. That's working hard on a number of bases. It's the last building, yet it will be the first building, and therefore what I've tended to think of as a hinge as we look towards plans for Phase 3 and Phase 4. At the same time, the building needs to be proud enough and grand enough to stand and hold its own in that campus. And finally, it really completes and resolves the master plan for phase 2. So as you walk around at the end of that, you will see how the landscape courts, which we have talked about in the past, will start to manifest themselves as warm, inclusive, open spaces that are designed and managed by the management company to be shared by all employees and all visitors to the campus. We won't be necessarily talking about cycles and cars today, but the councillor who is interested in that will know that we are developing an architectural masterpiece currently known as the Cycle Park, which is the top right, where we have created a semi-sunken home for about 400 plus bikes, safe, secure, dry, and yet maintain the landscape use of that space, which will be grassed over at the end of the day. Many. Yep, thank you. It's the bottom right. Hence its importance, as it would be the building that you might see when eventually that southern access road is built up through phase 3 and phase 4. And just flip back, Ross, one last comment in terms of the overview. When we started this journey on phase 2 a few years ago, we made a commitment to you and the campus that we would go on a BREEAM journey. And I'm pleased to say that this building is BREEAM outstanding, which is what our aspiration was. If I can just hand over to Ross. Thank you.
Yeah, as Andrew put it clearly.
Could you use a microphone, please?
Please. Thank you, John.
Ross, if you would just introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Ross MacWatt, Project Director from Scott Brownrigg, and I have been working through this development since pre-COVID, through 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 and now 4,000. So as Andrew clearly put it, 4,000 Discovery Drive is our bookend to the R&D component of phase 2, which is effectively 2/3 of the entire phase 2. And as you can see it there, positioned in the southeast corner. And I think it just is notable, the reason why there's a red line drawn in the sort of the wider notion of a potential future master plan is that southern access route. And so it's a consideration that this is not only a building that looks into this campus and has to be notably taken awareness from the Dea Mary Archway to the north, but it also is going to be seen as an approach point from Babraham. If I move on to the next slide and just hand over to Sammy regarding sustainability.
Morning, everyone. I'm Sammy Kamal, the Sustainability Lead from Hawley. So this is, I'm just going to touch a little bit on the sustainability aspirations for the development. So yeah, as Andrew said, for 4,000 we are targeting BREEAM outstanding, and yeah, the diagram at the top is just showing a little bit of the journey that we've gone on for CBC Phase 2, where for ABCAM back in 2019, the target for BREEAM was very good, and then this was elevated to excellent for 1,000, and then the target is also excellent for 2,000 and 3,000. So yeah, what we're intending on doing is targeting outstanding for 4,000, and then the diagram in the corner is just showing our progress. So the latest assessment is showing that we are comfortably achieving that and on track to achieve that outstanding rating. We're at 92, almost 93%, where the threshold for outstanding is 85. Go to the next slide. The BREEAM assessment is really underpinning the wider sustainability aspirations for the development. Due to the increased thresholds required for things like energy reduction, that's really driving the strategy for PV on the roof. There are additional co-benefits that we are pursuing as well. So with the PV, we're intending on installing biosolar PV to meet the biodiversity net gain targets that we're aspiring to achieve. We're also implementing circular efficiency and material efficiency processes into the design. something that we really focused on with the architectural team is looking at the facade design. We have looked at undertaking solar gains assessments against best practice guidance. So this is against the BCO framework, where we're comfortably passing in all of the spaces with regards to internal overheating. And then just a little bit on water. So the target for water is underpinned by the local planning policy, where we need to achieve 5 credits against WATO 1. And there's 3 approaches that we're taking to achieve this. This is through the implementation of rainwater harvesting, grey water harvesting, and then low flow fittings for the sanitary ware. So the plan is for rainwater to be collected from the roof, and then this is treated, and then some of it will be diverted for use within the building, and then some of it will be used for the irrigation.
Apologies, remember the microphone eventually. It should be just noted that this is no different from 2000 and 3000 and 2000 delivered on site at the moment with grey water harvesting, rainwater harvesting, so it's in exactly the same manner. Just to give you a note that there was, we did carry out an updated visual impact assessment. That's just to review how the building sits within the landscape, and it's seen to be no additional harm to the current landscape as, in terms of its parameter plan compliance. This is just showing you a view from the Magog Down hills from quite a distance away, and therefore what we've done is that we've just captured a far more zoomed in view, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to see it at all. And then if we just come to actually the scheme itself, so as the scheme and as this building is, as I mentioned before, is completing the R&D element of phase 2, we're effectively meeting the requirements of the maximum gross floor area delivery. So it's 59,000 square metres in total for the entirety of phase 2 R&D. It's a 6 stories building incorporating plus plant, which matches the buildings that are set around it. And as I mentioned before, this is a parameter plan compliant scheme. And incorporating with that element, the flavour of the parameter plan compliance, this is a scheme where we have effectively along the southern development line achieved through the R&D element 50% of landscaping, and therefore we continue that theme of landscape first approach. What we've endeavoured to do from the outset of working through 1000 Discovery Drive, picking up the language and elements from ADCAM and then taking that through 2000, 3000, now 4000, is that although these buildings look different, they have a family of material palette with similarities, so that they're effectively seen as cousins. They relate to each other. There is some identity there between the buildings. That being in the what we call the structural tree on 1000, which is repeated through 2000, and also just the masonry materiality that we have on 2000, 3000, 1000. We're looking to stone facing on 4000, and also just the anodized aluminium finishing on curtain walling and caps, curtain walling caps. So here's just a palette of the materials that you'd likely to see on 4000 Discovery Drive. You'll note in 2 and 3 there's 2 different stone type materials, which you'll see in the next slide how that is shown. So this just gives you an overview of almost like a wedding cake of the building, of the facades. And so at ground floor level, where you're effectively close up to the building, the stone finishes are like akin to a wit bed type of stone finish. So there's a fairly gnarled type of stone finish, so that you can, it's slightly warmer texture, and then the upper layer, it's deliberately split, but also it's split in terms of its materiality with a slightly softer finish. So it's a cleaner, lighter sort of stone finish. And then as you go up to the next section, there's a thinner strips of stone, but also deliberately done in a way that the privacy screen to the plant is set back. So there's effectively a nod towards the landscaping that's towards the south, so it shows a lightness in touch from the south of the crown of the building, which you can see on this elevation here, how it's broken down. And you can see that from the 5th floor, as it goes towards the crown at the top, that the mullions towards the crown are lightened up by the fact that you can see through to the privacy screen beyond. Just touching on, although we said we wouldn't necessarily talk about cycle parking and transport, this is just touching on the transport routes and just repeating what we've spoken about before. Obviously that we have strong connection routes, especially because we have the station coming through this year, Cambridge South, and also just touching on the southern link to the National Cycleway, which shows that arrow to the New Eastern Cycle Connection, which is actually being connected this year as a part of the 2000 Discovery Drive works. So that's already in place. I'm just going to hand over to John now with regards to the landscaping and the approach and the relationship to the...
Thanks, Ross. Hi, good morning. John Akerscore from Growth Industry Landscape Architects. I think as Andrew and Ross and the team have mentioned, as you can see on screen, 4000 exerts a sort of presence, a strong presence, which encloses the southern core that we're developing as we speak on the ground for 2000. So as the years have gone by, the formal enclosure with buildings surrounding a north court or a southern court, green spaces that are publicly accessible, provide a green outdoor amenity, provides a strong sense of place. And in terms of picking up on the transport connections, if one were to arrive either in a taxi, in an accessible vehicle, servicing delivery, come along this one-way central access route and head towards 4000 Discovery Drive, and also past the cycle park that's being built at the moment, where staff cyclists can park conveniently and then head directly towards the main entrance and the staff door for 4000. On the next slide, as you move closer to the building, the ability to really celebrate the sense of arrival and entrance beneath this double height colonnade we've spoken about previously. So a taxi drop, very immediate and in close proximity, well surveyed from the reception space, just on the left-hand side of the image. So clear line of sight for taxi users and pedestrians arriving on foot, heading towards the circle slide front door beneath the colonnade. And importantly, the southern court immediately addresses the colonnade with a sustainable rain garden with lush, sustainable planting, through which visitors on foot, say from the cycle park or from the southern court, can pass through over this bridge, in effect, towards the front door. And interestingly, we've been developing the language of covered walkway, denoting entrance space. And Ross, you may want to talk about the columns themselves.
Yeah, as mentioned before about the identity of the buildings, their relationship, node points for, sorry, apologies again, I'll remember one day. As mentioned before, obviously the identity of these buildings, the node points in terms of the connectivity to drawing people towards the buildings. We've repeated that with this series of colonnade. But instead of just using one structural tree, we've got effectively three, which creates this colonnade demarking effectively a north-south walking route, which comes from Dame Mary Archer Way and will run through to the south, and therefore the connection to the Phase 3 development.
And as you see on the screen here, and as Ross mentioned before, the new Eastern Cycle Link that connects back to the southeast and the cycle network plugs in here. So we've provided very immediate, very approximate visitor cycle stands, you can see, a mix of cargo and standard cycle stands right next to the covered walkway. And I think interesting, this walkway is one of the few points whereby we have direct pedestrian interface with building. There's no road in the way, it's purely pedestrian meets colonnade. And you can see here, if you were to arrive from the train station, 5-10 minute walk down from Dame Mary Archway, and your clear view south towards the colonnade and the overhang of 4,000. And then, as Ross says, potentially onwards into phase 3 towards the south.
Yes, obviously just discussing in terms of that route to the south, just handing to Andrew with regards to the...
Yeah, thank you. So as I mentioned before, 4,000 is working hard for the campus. It's creating that sense of enclosure for the southern courts. It's delivering an interesting and exciting facade for vehicles arriving up what will start life as Southern Access Road, and hopefully at some stage have a much more befitting name. But you can see that sense of arrival, and hence the importance of that corner. And not original, but very tried and tested design features from a classical playbook, if you will, with that ground level for 4,000, anchoring it to the ground, that mid-tier, and then the crown at the top that will be beautifully lit at night.
There you are. You can see a view of how it would look with that crown illuminated at night. And effectively, we're creating a jewel that can be seen from a distance as you approach from the southeast, giving it its own identity, giving that similarity in terms of the rational architecture that we've delivered in, especially with 2,000 and 3,000 Discovery Drive, but also kind of showing a developed progression in the architectural language and in terms of the materiality of the stone. And just come to the last slide. Yeah, as you can see how that looks in the daytime. And what that's also just showing is those projecting fins, which is obviously deliberately shown in a way to assist in the control of solar gain on the facade. The scheme has been designed in a way that we look at it from a sustainable approach to begin with, in terms of the sourcing of the material, the design and construction of the material. Is there any questions?
On that one, Ross, worth orientating people just before they embark on questions.
Yes. Sorry, before members embark on questions, I'd like to just make sure that you have completed your presentation first.
I was just going to orientate the team in terms of that's the eastern facade and the north facade that you're seeing there.
Yes. Thank you very much. Before I open it to questions from members, I wonder if there are particular aspects of this which you feel have significantly changed since your last presentation to us in August of last year. What should we focus on in respect of that?
Thank you, Chair. No, I don't think there has. There's been a commitment to the targets for sustainability, tick. There's always been a commitment to natural materials, tick. Stone, expensive, but you're worth it. And a nod to how hard this building is working in terms of that 360-degree view.
Right.
So it is what we've kind of envisaged.
A continuation of what you were presenting to us before. Now I'm going to open this to questions from members. Let me start by just seeing who wants to start the questioning. I have Councillor Bradnam, Councillor Stobart. Yes. Yes, Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to, thank you very much for your presentation, incidentally. It's always useful to see how your thought process is going and that you can take on board suggestions and thoughts from us as you go. I've got 6 points that I'll just make, and you can either answer them or just bear them in mind. So, firstly, the top floor, which you call a crown, may not physically be, but appears to be stepped out rather than stepped in, which makes it quite a prominent feature. And one question. Second on that, you've said it would be beautifully lit, and I just wondered what the implication of that would be for the longer views at night, for example, Magog Down, and the fact that sometimes I have previously asked people to dim lighting at night on buildings because it can be quite intrusive. Second point, Briam, you talked about the sustainability, Sammy, and I wondered how much water this building will use. Thirdly, I slightly lost track whether the aspect of this building is into the existing cluster or, as it were, towards Mary Archer Way, or perhaps both. Perhaps you can answer that, and whether that makes a difference to how people will approach it and understand it. And with that thought in mind, will you make it clear where the entrance to the building is? Because sometimes when you approach buildings in a cluster of buildings, it's not obvious how you get to the front door. So navigation is important, please. And sometimes there's a wish to have a uniform appearance, but actually people need to know where they're going to. And the last one was a question of clarity. In your slide 3.12, just a couple of ones back from this, I was trying to work out what was that one, yes, which is the building that's depicted as a grey shadow in the centre of the slide? I couldn't quite work out where we are from there.
Thank you. I'll try and pick up a couple of those. That one's freshest in my mind. So that is, in all likelihood, a multi-storey car park that the hospital plans to build on its share of the Phase 2 expansion land. So that's the best information we have at this point in time. And they've talked about two uses manifesting themselves there. One is an energy centre and one is a multi-storey car park. And we think it's most likely to be the multi-storey car park that will be butting up against our commercial development. Ross, most of the other questions were architectural. In terms of accessing the building, you make a very good point. And we've worked hard with the planning officer to arrive at a really good solution there, we think. The circle slide door will announce itself. We have a clear line of sight from the cycle park. So we've actually mapped where most people will be coming from. And if you think about that, we've got 450 bikes underneath that central court area. A lot of them will be coming that way. And so I think the first thing they see when they leave the cycle park would hopefully be that walkway.
My point was also, will they know which building? Suppose they've been told you're coming to 4,000. How will they know that they've got to?
Yeah. So I'll let John talk about some wayfinding.
As part of the overall Phase 2 strategy, from multi-storey to ABCAM to 1,000 and beyond, we're developing and installing a series of wayfinding totem, pedestrian totem with maps, with signage, with tenants that will roll out over the coming years. So from logical crossing points over Dame Mary Archer Way and other areas, there will be clear distance and direction to the key buildings. So that reinforces the visibility of covered walkways, red columns, equal front door, that kind of subliminal subtlety will also reinforce with the architecture.
I think it's a fair point on the wayfinding because we have gone through a progression with planning officers about natural language of the building and the landscaping and how you find your way there, and therefore the only other extended bit, as you were questioning, is in terms of that sort of actual proper signpost, as John's responded there. I may need to be reminded on some of these questions, but on the crown, firstly, it should be just noted, you may see this from the daytime, and just a point, this is actually showing the east facade and the south facade. And as you can see on the south facade here, at the top of the crown, that's actually showing the edges of the mullions coming through, and you would actually see effectively skylight shining through the edge of that. So effectively, the envelope of that planting closure sits back on the top floor. So the structural elements come through, but the envelope sits back on that 5th floor.
There's no protrusion.
So there isn't any protrusion.
We've sometimes had designers stepping back the very top plant level so that it's not quite so
Exactly.
massive.
Yes.
But not the massively is less.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And that's how we're effectively showing this, that the privacy screen of the plant enclosure, because you don't necessarily want to show the plant on the roof, we're effectively pushing the privacy screen back so that you can actually see that there is a step set back. Just with regard to the crown, it's effectively showing it top lit shining down. We had looked at this in a different, many sort of options here about whether we effectively illuminate the entire openings of all of these going round, and we felt that if it's just top lit shining down, it's only literally shining down and outwards towards the ground, and we can effectively control that. It's an illumination. It's not effectively trying to illuminate anything outwards. So we can control the level of illumination on that crown, so that there wouldn't be any more of a impact from a distance away.
The other question was about how much water the building would use.
So the way that the water consumption calculations are done is it's a comparison to a typical notional building. So I'm not sure what the actual litres per day are off the top of my head, but what we're targeting is a 55% reduction when compared to that typical building.
Councillor Bradnam, does that answer all your questions?
Except the last one. I would like to know.
Remind us of the last one.
Which was, how much water will this building use?
You
And
actually want
Sammy
to know
has explained
rather than in
5%
relation
less
to a
than
notional building, the actual usage.
Yes, exactly.
Is that possible?
I can get that at
Sure.
another time. It's 55%, not 5%. Yeah.
Right. Members, I did note down an order of progress, but it was quite clear to me everyone wants to ask questions, so I propose to progress from right to left, as you see it, from left to right as I see it. I can't recall whether Councillor Richard Williams had a question at this stage.
No, for reasons you'll understand.
Councillor Griffin?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I was wondering if you could go back to the slide that shows the facade of 2000.
Is that the palette? It shows all of this one?
That one there.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm wondering if you could explain to me how that design fits in with the rest, because it seems to me that it stands out as something that looks like it's from a different era from the other buildings. So maybe I just don't understand what's going on here. So maybe you could talk through that.
Certainly. So the comparisons between the buildings is about the rational approach in terms of how the buildings are split up, and they're expressed in 2000 and 3000. You can effectively see those sort of horizontal divisions within the ground and first floor zone, and then the mid-tier zone and the upper zone. It's been done in a slightly different way to what we're doing on 4000, where we've got a lower zone, a mid-tier zone, and upper zone as well, but we're expressing more verticality in the strips on as a sort of glazed ribbon and stone strips on 4000. It is also possibly worth noting that these two buildings look a little more glazed, a little bit more open than on 4000, and 4000 is more heavily clad. And there's a deliberate approach there in terms of solar gain and in terms of sustainability. So we are effectively looking towards modelling this and and getting it to work on a sustainability point of view before we actually then further develop the envelope, which is why you see it as it is. But in terms of obviously then the material palette, it's very, very similar. We have taken on on board the comments from the planning officers about the tone of materiality, and I think we started at a certain point, maybe when we presented this before, that this would be more like a porcelain, very white sort of stone. Now we're bringing that colour with a bit more warmth in the stone so that it's more akin to what we have on 2000 with the Marseille brick, which is obviously a very, very light, whitish, buffish colour brick. So there's a language in that materiality. And then obviously then when you actually look at the ground floor and the double height space on 2000, you can see that, how you've got that entrance approach, a double glazed entrance approach with effectively an external welcoming soffit. We had that on 1000, and we'll continue to have that on 4000 as well. So that entrance approach is very similar in language on 4000 to both 1000, 2000 and 3000. Does that help to answer your
Okay,
question?
thank you.
Because I could go on forever.
I think that particular illustration is intended to help us by enabling us to compare the different buildings in the family.
Yes.
May have confused us into thinking that is a view of 4000, which, am I right in saying that that particular illustration is not intended to show us what 4000 will look like necessarily?
I suppose I could have shown you this image, which may have been a little better, because you can now see 2000 from the south, 3000 into the corner, and 4000. So this is actually therefore showing the west facade of 4000. And again, here you can see that middle tier of 2000 a little better, and you can see how on 2000 with the glazing and louvers and mullions, you can see those thin strips, and a second to fifth floor zone, just the same as we have on 4000 with the stone and glazed ribbon strips. And we still have, effectively on 2000, that crown. We've got a very light louvered crown on 2000, and where on 4000, again, we've got that light crown, but it's a little bit more, we've effectively accentuating the stone on the facade. So it's very, very similar in terms of its rational approach.
Thank you for that. Councillor Stobart, just to remind members first that we have given ourselves up to 25 minutes and we started at past. It's now, let's say, 10:45. So if members would keep their questions relatively brief, perhaps confine themselves to a maximum of 3 questions, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Chair. So I've got a couple of questions, which are more to do with the context of the building than the building itself. First on lighting, and how the lighting scheme of the building connects with the lighting scheme of the surrounding area. Because lighting is a very quickly progressing technology. I'm wondering how you're sort of tapping into some of the recent developments in lighting capability, and that might be people-sensitive lighting, or, well, there's a host of things. But I suppose, the lighting is about balancing, the beauty of the environment, when light levels are low, but also ensuring safety and sight lines are maintained and so on. So what are you doing there? And secondly, on art and, combining art with the obvious ecology and sympathetic ecology of the development, how does the notion of art fit, and does it carry over into the building as well, or is that a possibility? So 2 things, lighting and art.
So I'll just take the lighting question. What we're working very closely with our lighting colleagues at Hawley on is essentially a 4-stage, goes back to the earlier question, 4 stages of dimmable lighting. So, the low level, reduced lux levels where it's quieter at 11 o'clock at night will be much different to when it's busier, where we have clearly throughout as a baseline safe lux levels for pedestrians and vehicles using some of these routes. We have the ability to up lighting when there's an event or an activity and step it down further. So we're very acutely aware of this southern location, sensitivity with ecology, with natural movements through of creatures and wildlife. So yeah, the ability with Dali fixing, with LED fixing, which are highly sustainable, and last a long time to be able to step down lighting in a sensitive manner?
Art, my second favourite topic. So yes, we've had a very successful public art delivery programme on the campus historically. Phase 2 saw the delivery of the Senescent project behind ABCAM. And the remaining piece of public art that we have planned for phase 2 will appear actually on the side of building 2000, so not 4000. As supporters of a landscape first policy, what we're doing is actually working to deliver a sustainable living wall within inside 4000. So the theme there will be taking some of the landscaping themes that we have in our courts and taking those inside. They're difficult to maintain if they're over-ambitious, but a correctly sized living wall will add that human touch to that space as we go in. So there is an ongoing public art programme that we signed up to with our 106 programme when the planning consent was originally granted. That's nearing its completion, but we're going to be adding additionality to 4000 as well.
Members, we said we'd allow ourselves 25 minutes. I'm going to use Chair's discretion to extend that. It seems rather foolish when we're having what I think is a productive, let's call it conversation. And we still have a number of members wanting to ask questions. I'd quite like to have time to ask one or two myself, but we'll see. Councillor Porra.
Thank you very much. A couple of comments. Obviously, BREEAM Outstanding is very welcome. The coloured struts, I think last time I mentioned the fact it's useful to have a coloured delineation near the doors, like you've got that sculpture on, is it 1000? Cycle connections are welcome and the grey and rainwater. But 3 questions I have. I think foul water discharge is becoming a huge issue in the city, as you're aware. I think when it comes back, it would be very useful to see what innovation you can think of there in terms of obviously discharging, well, cleaning, using ponds, you know, those kind of things. That would be useful. For me, I think the development will stand and fall on the landscaping, the ground for activation, and things like the living wall, which I always have a level of cynicism about because sometimes they're far too ambitious and end up dying. So I think it would be interesting to hear from you either now or in the future how you're going to ensure that landscaping comes forward. Because I've been on the site, been to Addenbrooke's a few times to visit a friend, did a good walk around. It's quite barren at the moment, obviously, because it's a building site. But that will make it feel better, I think. And finally, you talked about the car and delivery and taxi routes, which I think you suggested sort of going well, from the left of the visual looking at. But there doesn't seem to be any delineation there to stop or traffic calming. So I'd be really interested to see how you're planning to do that so we don't end up with sort of long racetrack that people can shoot along at high speed, which is mixed use with travel, cycle and pedestrians. I think I did that in 3, Chair.
Just before you answer that, I'm going to add on my own question. Of course, when you came to talk to us last time, we drew attention to the TR de Mariach's Way and so on, which I think is administered by Prologis. Clearly with the southern access road as well, there may be a temptation for rather more traffic, which may not be directly related to employers on the site using the road. And you may like to address that or come back to it as another stage on that.
I just pick that one up as it's fresh in my mind while my colleagues think about the other ones. The developer installed the system and it's maintained by the management company. You're absolutely right, there is going to be a limited amount of additional traffic with the appearance of the southern access road, and writ large in the emerging local plan under the policy for the campus is language to help tackle that very subject. So we are very alive to that. First question might have been taxi drop-offs and segregation.
Yeah, in terms of the nature and character of what we're calling the central access route, which has been discussed in previous applications for 2000 and rolls on now for 3 and 4000. First and foremost, you turn off Dame Mary Archer Way onto Discovery Drive, tarmac roads, behave at a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. Then you turn into and onto the campus, onto a block paved environment, 5-mile-an-hour, speed signs controlled, pinched crossing points with trees, bollards, change of materiality. So we are trying to advance warn drivers in particular, and these are regular servicing users who are going to come here a few times a week. They will know the setup, but also visitors, accessible parking, taxi drop, to behave politely, slowly, and understand this is a pedestrian priority campus.
Just should be noted that the majority of vehicles, as they come down Discovery Drive, are likely to turn away from this area because they'll be obviously approaching the multi-storey car park. And therefore, the vehicles that are actually coming into this area are likely to be the delivery vehicles through the central servicing access route that we have obviously carefully designed through, through the application 2000, 3000 Discovery Drive and the taxi drop-off. And there's effectively a one-way route wrapping around 1000 and running through the service route to take you back out onto Dame Mary Archer Way. Does that help to answer that question?
Yes, I think it's just to be really mindful that it needs to be very clearly signalled, whether that is
Yes.
bollards or raised tables, to avoid those conflicts.
Sometimes in our images, those subtleties get a little bit lost with a bit of artistic license.
Right, members, I've sort of informally extended this session to 10 o'clock. I haven't consulted our guests on that. I would be reluctant to go further because we do try to confine ourselves as well as confining the amount of time that our developers have, but we do have a number of further questions. So if members would be relatively quick in their questions, and possibly if our developer guests would answer reasonably briefly. I'm conscious of the fact that Councillor Flaubert has also joined us online and may want to ask a question. She'll no doubt put that in the chat if she does. So, Councillor Smart.
Not sure I have a question, Chair, but I've got some feedback. I could be brief. I've got one question, actually. Okay, so thank you for the presentation. They are the building, the master plan, and the environment and urban planning. So the building, by the way, good, it's sustainable, et cetera, but then you would do that, wouldn't you, to save money, because that's the way that you can make savings, both long-term and short-term. So where's the architecture? What I see is a steel and glass block. I mean, you've talked it up, and fair enough, and you've done a lot of logistical planning around it, obviously, but it's just another building. I mean, that's the bottom line. Steel and glass, maybe stone or reconstituted stone, I'm not sure. So the family of buildings is an interesting idea, and fair enough, cousins who say, but this is...
Councillor Smart, I think you said you were just giving us some feedback, and I'm sure you will be bearing in mind what I suggested at the start about not taking too firm a view.
No, I've not noticed the view.
Too much.
No feedback.
I think our legal advisor might want to just advise us on that point.
Thank you, Councillor Smart. It feels to me more than feedback. I really want you to be careful with what you say. I do not want you to put yourself in a position where you're unable to sit on the application when it comes before committee.
Councillor Smart, did you have anything else to add?
I'm halfway through. You can stop me if you want, Chair. So this is a dysfunctional family. The family members are all doing what they like, with little or no reference to other family members. The master plan doesn't exist. You talked about a master plan. There isn't one. There was one written in 2013, that's 13 years ago, by a firm of architects, and some, I think your lot have been involved as well, that are here today. But we know we don't have a master plan of any consequence. Finally, the environment and urban planning. It's interesting how, I'm not sure whether I'm in the countryside or I'm in the city. You talked about it being a part of the city, not a destination. So there's no clear urbanity. I suppose the spaces are going to be empty when they're not being used. You showed people in the pictures, but maybe there won't be people after closing time. So that's a concern. So I think all of those things, it's not to say that I don't like it. What I'm saying is that I'm concerned as to what you're trying to aim to achieve here. because I can't see a clear story. There's not a clear narrative that convinces me of what this building is trying to say to us as, you know, a building in the environment. Thank you, Chair.
So, as Councillor Smart said, that wasn't a question as such. You're of course very welcome to respond if you wish. Otherwise, I shall pass on to Councillor Garvey. Did you have a question? Yes, please.
Yes, it was just about disabled workers, and I just wondered how they'd access the building. Thank you.
Yes, in terms of accessibility, to the north of 4000 Discovery Drive, there are accessible car parking bays literally within a few metres from the front entrance. So there's a direct access point into the building. And then this is a very accessible building, so it's easy to access through the building as well. I don't have a more detailed plan for you in this presentation, but effectively within the application you'll be able to see how clear the route is through and how conscious we provide with regards to contrasting colours and all of the general requirements from building regulations. And also we do provide in terms of cycle park, various types of cycling ability. So that also provides for accessible cycle parking as well. And we have, yes, I didn't want to go into it, but yes, there is also a changing places facility. So effectively we've gone the extra mile, as it were, that if it was needed, then there is actually space for that as well.
Thank you. Well, members, it is now 11 o'clock. However, I see that Councillor Thornborough, Vice Chair, Councillor Smith, not had an opportunity to ask a question. I wasn't sure whether Councillor Williams, who declined to ask one, might have something to say. I had in mind to ask a question myself, but we'll dispense with that. Would it be acceptable to all if we continue until, let's say, 5 past, so that we can deal with those? Thank you. Councillor Thornborough. And if members would keep it brief, please.
Thank you very much for bringing this. It's really good to have actually been to 1000 Discovery Drive, and because these are very big buildings, and I know that the real success of the buildings is actually the shadows, the quality, the feel as you move round. So actually being able to go round one of the buildings has been really good. And I think that's always very difficult to get across in any planning application or any drawings that you give us. It's just almost impossible unless you are really embedded in looking at drawings and understanding. So I think a site visit might be worthwhile. So my comments are really about what I'm hearing from people investing is that their number one priority is not attracting the world's best employees because they come. It's retaining them after 2 or 3 years. So I think that on this type of development, we need to be thinking about what really attracts the people to come to Cambridge and stay and be in this incredibly important location. So and how can they thrive? So if they're younger people, I think we need to be thinking about the nursery provision. That's what's been I've heard in other sites about for men and women wanting to continue their careers and not be constrained by having a family, and support for that. I know there are nurseries in this location, but you could have an awful lot of employees, so is that going to be addressed? I also think that you talked about BREEAM outstanding, which is fantastic. There's also the Cambridge Institute for Sustainable Leadership have a standard for well-building standard, and they've achieved gold. It's about how people feel in a building, and I think that would be interesting. I'm also aware we've had lessons from West Cambridge where there were great facilities within the buildings, but there wasn't the cross-fertilization of ideas, and they built the West Hub, which is just so busy and so successful, not just for those working nearby, but also people coming in from outside. And finally, I think the example of Eddington, the landscaping at Eddington, where it's just astonishing the level of sustainability and ecology and that landscape growing up now over a few years, it's really adding to the success. So I think I just think that's a nice comparable, because it's, and I actually think that what you're talking about in this location needs to be in the context of the wider setting. So the biodiversity band just to the south, the corridor just to the south is really important, and how it fits into the landscaping elsewhere. So that's just my comments. But I feel that the relationship of this to the other three buildings works well, and I look forward to seeing the full application. Thank you.
Before you respond to that, I think Councillor Smith had a question, and then perhaps
Yes, thank you.
A bit of time to respond.
If we're speaking about families of buildings, then I think a proposal by Adam Brooks to build a multi-storey car park on the southern access road is the illegitimate child of this family, and I hope that child is orphaned somewhere else, because that would detract completely from what you're trying to do, creating a beacon building. On the lighting, I was rather hoping that one of the phases is no lighting at all, particularly after hours, because obviously it does impact on nature. In regards to your luxury bag shed, when this comes back, I'd be very interested in how you've developed the desire lines, both actually into the site and into the buildings, is absolutely crucial to maintain the quality of the landscape, because obviously people create their own desire lines. We see this all happening all over the place. I'd endorse the comments that were made about animating the development and how the West Hub kind of like really works on the Cambridge West site, as Councillor Thornbury was saying, not just for the well-being and making people want to come into work because of the socialisation, but also because of the accidental collisions, which Cambridge is so famous. So many things have happened in Cambridge because of accidental collisions between people. So this needs to be part of the scheme. But finally, my question to you is: are you satisfied with the planning regime that this joint planning service provides you with? Because you're a top developer, and are you happy with what we do? And if we're not, what change would you want to make? Because what I'm seeing coming out of this process is, development that is attractive to the market and is making Cambridge prosperous.
Mm-hmm. Right. Members, I think that is the last of what I shall call questions. Am I right? Yes. That last question we will fully understand if you choose not to address it today. We're all fascinated to know your views on it, but it may not be directly related to this application, so you may want to communicate with us separately on that. I don't think Councillor Flaubert, who's online, has a question. I won't ask any further questions, so please, the floor is yours to wind up, if you would.
Thank you. Shall I frighten you all and take that last question? Planning is a contact sport. And I think Councillor Thornbury's suggestion that the more people that we can embrace on site to share the journey with physically will make these sessions even more useful. So I really would welcome that. And everybody here, this is our favourite topic apart from our families and home. So we love it, we breathe it, we think we're adding value to the city. We welcome your interaction, but we really would like to spend time with you on site as well. Thank you.
Thank you, members, and thank you very much for that presentation. We would very much like to take you up on that. It is clearly one of a family of developments, and I think it will be, we would like to take the opportunity to come out and see it on site with you before you get to the next stage. Vanessa Blaine wanted to comment, I think.
I'm going to pass over to to Philippa to comment on site visits, please.
Right. So thank you very much. Philippa Kelly's just going to comment.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to advise members that a member site visit will be arranged, but it will not be with the developer team. It will be prior to the JDMC formal application coming before us. But in line with our protocol on site visits, which I'm more than happy to share with the developer team, we wouldn't foresee that it would be necessary to have developers present. If you would like to send representatives, we can advise you about that, but we wouldn't be expecting it to be interactive and you to be providing advice at that time, because we will be focusing on the officer's report to JDMC when the time comes. So I hope that clarifies the position. Thank you.
Of course, during the course of the application, as you know, developers will get an opportunity to present to us rather more briefly than was possible today. Now, Councillor Richard Williams, who didn't get the question earlier,
if I could just make
a comment on it?
Just make a comment on Philippa Kelly's point, which I agree with. I mean, I would just say, I want to put on record, I think we need to be very careful that we are here to assess planning applications. We're not here to make planning applications. We're not here to, comment on what we'd like particularly to see. We should be assessing them neutrally and not get too involved in making them. And I worry that we are coming close to blurring that line.
Yes, members, I think in the light of that, I'm going to ask members to stay on for a few minutes afterwards, although this is the only item on our business today. So it just remains for me to thank the developer team very much for taking the time and great care to present to us in that way, and to say from our point of view, it is extremely helpful. Thank you. Right, so if members would stay on for a while, we'll then call the meeting to...
Would you like the live stream ended, Chair?
I think I will just announce the end of the meeting and then we'll... Can I just, while we're still in session, remind members that the next JDMC meeting is to take place on 25th of February. And just remind you to liaise with your subs, alternates, just to ensure that it's quoried. So that now concludes this Joint Development Management Committee.